Hi, my name is Lars Jornow. I'm heading up the growth team here at King.com. I've been with the company for 4 years in various positions. This is my 7th job. So I've been a product manager for several of the Facebook games. I've been games acquisition manager, and last year I headed up the mobile division.
So let's talk a little about your own background. What video games did you play growing up?
I got a NES for my 7th birthday with Super Mario, so that was my first real video game experience, which I'm sure I'm sharing with a lot of other people around the world. After that, I graduated to the 16-bit Super Nintendo, and onwards to I was working summers to save up for my first computer, a 386 16 megahertz or whatever it was, which I played all the early what do they call it? The Ski Jumper, Quake 1 later, Warcraft 1, Utopia, an online community game, and yeah, so on.
How did you get involved in game development?
Actually, I lived in the US for 7 years, and then I moved back and I started working at a online auction company. And then a year in, a friend of mine who worked here called me up and said, "I know how much you love games, why don't you come and work for us?" And that's when I started here as a games acquisition manager. So my first year here I played about 12,000 games, flash games around the world, and then I licensed about 200 of those games and reskinned them, rebranded them as King.com games.
What are you looking for when you were doing that in terms of whittling down what games would work?
It's actually really interesting because you have a hypothesis to start with, what will work and what won't. But then after you publish 30 or 40 games, we started getting a lot of data coming in from the games. And we could actually not just rely on our intuition, but also rely on the metrics and the data. But in terms of my own intuition to start with, I think the game has to work the first 30 seconds. If you don't understand the mechanic, if you don't understand the purpose, or if it's not fun the first 30 seconds, it's essentially game over. And it's not just for a person like you or me. It needs to work for a majority of people that try it. If your mom tries it, your grandma, or your uncle who has never played a game on a video game console in his whole life, if he tries out a game, a flash game or a mobile game, it needs to work for him in about 30 seconds or it's not going to break.
What have you found specifically that does translate, especially when you're looking at a global audience for casual games?
I think mechanics that somehow also work in real life tend to work. If you look at Angry Birds as the typical example, it's essentially a slingshot, right? Everyone knows a slingshot. You don't have to be a gamer, you don't have to own a console to understand how a slingshot works, because you all grew up and went to school and went to kindergarten and somehow, at some point tried a slingshot. So it needs to be a natural motion that you then easily understand inside of the casual game. It's the same with, sort of like with the switchers, it makes sense to move two stones or diamonds or candy and then put 3 in a row and they disappear. It's just, it's sort of like the 3 or 4 in a row concept that a lot of people easily understand.
Can you talk a little about the further selection that goes on here from getting from King.com to moving up to a Facebook platform with, for example, a Bubble Witch Saga or a Candy Crush Saga?
So obviously on King.com we create a lot of games, maybe 1 game a month, and then we see the metrics on which games are the most popular. But it's beyond that, we also look at the game categories within the casual social industry, if you will. So there could be 6 or 7 categories depending on who you talk to. And it's also for us then to balance our portfolio. We're not going to have 15 switchers just because they're all very, very high performing. We want to balance ourselves and offer a wide variety of casual social games to our audience.
Can you break down the different categories as you guys see them?
Sure. So one is switcher or a match 3 type of category. That's probably the biggest one globally. Then we have bubble shooters like Bubble Witch Saga, and Bubble Saga was right before that for us. So we had 2 games in that category. There's word games, hidden object games, clickers, which is sort of like a you click areas of blocks and they disappear, like a pet rescue saga on Facebook. And then there are ball droppers, like Papa Pear, another category. And then I think some people consider quiz games one of the categories. We don't have many big games there because it's very challenging to make a very good quiz game globally, because quiz questions are by default of local culture and history. There's also Tetris. The Tetris category is a category that's essentially untouched by others because they've been the most successful in protecting their game mechanic from a legal perspective. So that's like the untouched casual social category, but we operate in maybe the 5 or 6 first ones that I mentioned.